Hello and welcome to everybody. Today, Trevor and I are going to talk to you about best practice risk management in defence. We'll do a bit of an introduction, a little bit about us, but I want to go on to looking at what are the drivers for risk management in defence, and how do we consider, what do we consider best practice in terms of a framework for risk and the risk management system. Okay, so you can see here, although the focus in defence is very often on projects, actually we're going to talk a bit wider about enterprise-wide risk across defence as well, because it's one of the things that's happening, we find, across all of our customers these days. Many of them are spreading their risk management from purely looking at things like on time, on budget, in a project or program environment. And of course, many of the projects we work with are huge. They're mega projects, so they're kind of whole businesses in their own right. But they are spreading it across the wider organisation and all the way up to strategic level. First of all, I'll just talk a little bit about who we work with. So we're based at head office in Oxford. We're also spread around in Australia, where we service customers across the Asia Pacific region. And we also have feet on the ground in Toronto, in Canada, to service North America. And actually we have customers in South America as well. In the UK, we've got customers across the Middle East, and many of our customers are actually global. So they have multiple sites that are using Predict, our system across the world. So there you can see a whole bunch of logos. Those aren't all of the defence customers we work with. Quite a lot of them don't let us show their logo. So, but those are the ones that, as far as we know, haven't told us that we're not allowed to. Okay, so what's the backdrop and why are we looking at risk in defence? Well, one of the big problems, and this is highlighted, and I've pulled out a couple of examples from Australia, in fact. This is the Australian Institute of Project Management, and they brought out a report on project success, and I'm sure you can't read the detail there, but there is a link down the bottom, and perhaps we can put that in the chat for you later if you want to go and have a look at that. But the key metrics, the summary of it, it's interesting that instead of just talking about the 36%, only 36% delivered on budget and 32% delivered on time, which has gone down since their previous survey, actually they're also reporting on how many projects met their business goals, not just their deliverables, but their business goals, and how many satisfied their stakeholders. And it's pretty disappointing that year on year, and no matter how much we all strive to achieve better, faster, cheaper, more successful projects, it's still very difficult. And in fact, the circumstances and the context in which we're delivering projects is getting more difficult. So what are the risk management drivers? Well, we all know, I think, major issues at the moment: workforce planning, retention, recruitment, costs around the world, cyber threats. A lot of stuff is hitting us. So trying to get on with our day-to-day jobs, we're often really struggling. The whole context of the global situation, uncertainty across geopolitical, around the world. I think this is the record of the most elections there are going to be across the world ever. And supply chain, very, very big problems. We know from the pandemic. And then that's not to mention things like that are affected by climate change. But there is a positive side. We really need to be looking at things like digitization, AI, innovation, and actually there should be a carriage return there because scrutiny should be on the next line, because we also need to be mindful of the National Audit Office, and that those exist everywhere: the UK, Australia, in Canada, the GAO in the USA. So we are all under scrutiny, and of course we should be, because in defence we're effectively spending our money. It's our taxpayers' money. and we need to be mindful of governance and compliance. So all of these drivers sit behind us trying to deliver faster, cheaper, better. And one of the things that we need to be mindful of is not just doing projects right, but doing the right projects. I mentioned the National Audit Office, and the most recent report that I came to my notice was the February 24 major projects report. So this report's on the 21 biggest projects in Australia, but there's exactly the same thing in the UK, in Canada. And it's really good to see that they are now reporting after several years and after there was a big risk reform programme in Australia, that they're recognising Defence have implemented cohesive and structured application of ISO 31000 risk management standards and mandated risk-based decision-making processes, which is it's excellent. I have to say, and blowing our own trumpet here, the National Audit Office in Australia also check out what's happening on Predict, which is used across all the projects, programmes, and all the way up to enterprise in Australia. And this was what they said last month. Predict delivers a modern risk management platform, etc. I'm really pleased that they are getting projects off spreadsheets and getting them onto Predict so that they can achieve better governance and reporting right up the chain through the enterprise. So in order to do that, you need a good risk management framework. So let's have a look at that. And it needs to sit across the entire defence ecosystem, from the customer through prime contractors and into the supply chain and across the businesses of all of those bits of different entities. So at the customer level, we have the enterprise looking for real-time information. Managers nowadays, they want to know what's going on, and they don't want to wait for you to gather a whole load of stuff from all over the place, whether it's sitting in different bits of spreadsheets or SharePoint or wherever it is, all over the place. They want to see it in one system, and they need that in order to make strategic decisions, risk-based decisions. Similarly, within the customer, being mindful of governance, they need to understand what's happening from a business case point of view, delivering against objectives, achieving outcomes, and ensuring that they are focused on benefits. Because it's no good doing projects if they don't actually deliver anything, or if they deliver too late, if they cost more than the business case said they would, which means that you could have spent the money better elsewhere. So all of that is a focus from a customer point of view, and that could be across the stakeholder, people in services. We're delivering, and actually, people on the ground who rely on the defence and security within their national boundaries. The prime contractors, being contracted to deliver a project or programme might be very, very complex. And of course, you're focused on all the usual things, requirements, deliverables, scope, etc. But of course, that sits in the context not only of the customer and the enterprise, but also the outside influences like cost escalation and so on. From a business point of view, we're focused on performance, KPIs, variance, but increasingly looking at causes, consequences, control. So not just looking at a risk and saying, here's a risk, it's an event, it's got a probability and impact. We're now actually looking at trying to expand that information into something that you can have whole conversations about, engage people. And that's one of the things Trevor and I are going to show you. Making sure, of course, all the mitigation, preventive, corrective actions are in place, and ensuring that you can achieve a sound audit report, whether it's internal, external audit. And then finally, more and more of our customers are ensuring that you have to ensure that they're in compliance with all the rules and regulations. And I prefer, and it's really great to see some of our customers talking about these things as pillars. One of our, in fact, in one of our electricity companies is implementing a whole new view on pillars. Also, later on, I think towards the end, we've got some downloads for you. ASC the Australian Submarine Corporation, have for many years been looking at risk across their whole business, and they also have this kind of tagging system across all their functional areas in order to ensure that risk isn't just siloed, it is being discussed and reviewed across the enterprise. Okay, so I think, oh yeah, sorry, another build there. As I said, one of the things that we're trying to achieve is communications across the business and delivering responsibility, accountability through a good governance structure. So we also need a risk management system, and that's where Predict comes in. And we're actually going to, well, Trevor and I are going to have a bit of fun now.
Yes.
We're going to take you through an example of using Predict in real life. Now, this is a kind of bringing together several of the different things that our customers do that we really admire, and we think they're doing a really good job. I would also say that we use Predict ourselves. We use it for not only our projects that when we're delivering to customers, when we're rolling out, we use it across the things that we do within the company, our ISO 27001 cybersecurity ISMS system, when we're doing our development, our business risks. So we're going to give you a bit of a look at how you might, maybe some ideas on how you might apply some best practice risk management. Right. Okay. So, right, Trevor, I've got a strategy meeting next week, and I'm going to need to take people through risk on the multi-role fighter program.
Yes.
I really need some help on this because this is very new stuff, and I want to get people engaged. So show me, how are we going to lead this
Okay, well, let's start off with sort of the basics. I'm looking here at all of the risks that we've got so far identified for the whole of the program, including the projects that are below it that comprise it. But you can see that that's also actually within the structure of the rest of the enterprise. You mentioned internal controls and functions in your presentation just now. So there you go. So I've got all the different functions and so on. So we can have the risk sitting at that functional level as well as tagging them within the projects. And we'll have a look at that in a bit, I think. All right.
Yeah. Okay. So just take me through what I'm looking at a risk register here, am I? What are those risks?
Interesting. Actually, you're looking at a combination of risk registers, really. Okay. So we've got the individual risk registers that are down at the project level, and I've got the risk register at the program level as well. And I'm showing all of those risks in the one view here. Okay. And
okay.
At the moment, I'm currently sorting this based upon their current score. Okay.
Okay.
Which is why you get the high red ones at the top there. As simple as that.
Well, I can see some of the things that we're going to be talking about next week then. But I do see there's a red one a bit further down the list. Why is that not up with the other red ones?
Oh, right. Yeah, gotcha. Well, the reason for that is we've got as I said, we've got all of the projects in here now, including some pretty small ones. And this red one here is in Project C. And that's one that's literally only got, how many? Yeah, it's only got 4 risks in there, and they're of a much smaller scale than the other ones, the other projects. So yes, it's high for them, but for the rest, compared to the rest of the projects, it isn't anywhere near as significant.
Okay, but that's interesting, because what that means is that although I can, from a higher level program point of view, I don't have to worry about it quite so much. I can see what they might be worrying about in Project C. So it's possible to see that. Okay, good. Right. All right. So how are we going to present this to people?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that we've got all of those different functional department heads in your meeting. So I thought it would be easiest is if we showed them how these risks were grouped based upon their particular areas of interest. But also, I think what I think you will find quite interesting is how these risks are linked together as well. So if we have a look at that over here. And there we go. So a completely different view, but it's exactly the same information. Okay. So what I've done here is to group those risks. All right. Remember, they're from the different projects and at the program level as well, based upon how they've been tagged on the functional area that they belong to. Right. And then we've got a few links, which I think might make something somewhat obvious to you. I'll leave you to think about that one.
Okay. Well, I can see, and obviously we do know that recruitment and retention, which if I'm reading it properly, is the one right in the middle there.
Yeah, that's right. That's the name of the risk we've got there. That's right.
Yeah. So that's part of the whole workforce planning issues that we have. And it's linked to lots of things. It's linked to risks in engineering and operations and IT and down in finance and so on. So well, I wonder if the HR manager knows about this. Perhaps I better give him a call and take him through this before we actually land him in it in the meeting.
I think it would be a useful idea. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So in fact, what we can do is if we double click on that one, it will take us through to the detail that we've got about that actual risk. Okay. So I don't know if you can see this properly now. On the left-hand side here, we've identified a number of causes that might actually be causing this risk, as well as then a consequence of that. But on the right-hand side over here, we've actually looked at the controls that should be hopefully preventing some of those causes or reacting if it actually occurs. I can just sort of help bring things to life for you. This particular control here, the terms and conditions of employment control, we think will be helping us prevent the early retirement, or perhaps not prevent early retirement, but mitigate the effects of it, as well as the inability to attract and retain staff causes that we've got.
Okay, so how did you do that? If I'm doing that in the meeting next week, you clicked on.
Yeah, I've got a little light bulb.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And also, what immediately comes to my attention, I'm a visual person, is that we've got an effectiveness column there, and there's some red bits in that. I don't like the look of that.
That's the thing with red, isn't it? It always makes you worry about it. So what has been done here is that we've assessed the effectiveness of these controls with specific relation to this risk. All right, and we're saying that the information security event reporting control we don't believe is at all effective. Okay, nor is this reactive control we've got here. So I think this is certainly something you need to be talking about with the HR manager as to why that is. Is that really the case? What is it we need to do with those controls? And perhaps then talking to the owners of the controls themselves as to why they're not as effective as we would hope that they are in relation to this particular risk.
And I see that this risk is scored, looks to me, it's scored medium.
Yes, that's
but
right.
We've got all those ineffective controls, and so how are we scoring this? What's it based on?
If we have a look at the score that we've come up with here, then we've got a number of different impacts that we're looking at. So we've assessed it with a cost, which we're actually looking at quite quantitatively here. All right. Yeah. But also we've got things like a quality, so that the quality, looking at whether or not different acceptance criteria are met and so on. Right. And if we wanted to, when you're discussing it, you can even add further ones as well. And there could be more of these within the system if you wanted to do different impacts could be added to this. So that's how we're assessing that, having taken into account the controls that we've just been looking at as well. Okay. Yeah. So this is based upon effectively after that scenario.
And I am aware some of our customers have got whole loads of different impacts, so that you can have as many as you want, and
you sure can. That's right.
Okay. All right. And then what's that? What's the next bit down then? Actions. So we've got an action against that.
That's right. This is the key thing. It's about implementing our workforce plan. So the strategy we've got. And what we're saying is, once we've implemented this, which we're planning to do before by the end of June this year, then we expect that we will by then be assessing the risk down at this low level here, as opposed to the medium that we currently think we're at. All right.
Yeah.
So that really is key to make sure that actions is performed.
Okay. All right. And but this is the risk at this program level. So there could be the same risk elsewhere in different programs.
There could be potentially. That's right. Yeah. Which we could see if we were looking at a higher level and linking risks together. That's right.
Okay.
So that's taking you through what it looks like. But if you're discussing this with the HR manager, I think it will be far easier for you, because you mentioned you were a visual person, to actually have a look at it from this sort of perspective.
Oh, okay. All right. I haven't seen that before.
It's the same information. Here's our risk. Here's the causes that we've got. And if once you're looking into this in more detail, you could add further causes, you can see up on the top left, or other consequences. Hopefully, you might even be able to come in, and if you click on the plus button here, be adding further controls into the system. And of course, you can also start to edit the controls that are already there.
Oh,
okay?
yeah. So that's the one that's not been...
That's the one that's not been assessed at all in terms of its effectiveness. So hopefully you'll be able to come in and say that one is totally effective, whatever, perhaps just partially effective. Let's be let's be good. Let's say it's substantially effective. It's up to you and the HR manager to do that. Okay. And of course, down here, I'd put my justification as to why we're actually assessing it with that effectiveness.
Yeah.
Okay. So that then just automatically says, and that will be exactly the same in the detail screen we were looking at earlier, but is a far better way of talking about it, getting people engaged, but also it's also much better to present. We could quickly save that perhaps as a PDF or even a PowerPoint presentation that you could start to put in a presentation pack for people as well. And you would be, if you did it in PowerPoint, you'd be able to annotate it as well to point out certain things.
Okay. Just being old-fashioned, back at the risk register, can we do a dashboard of that?
Oh yes, yeah. So again, we've got all of the reports available, so we could click on a dashboard one here, and as I said, yeah, I could output that PowerPoint, Word, or PDF. We'll just do a PDF at the moment, and then you always wonder where on earth that's going to come up on when you're using two screens. Right, so it's done over there. We can click on it now. Oh, there it goes. It's decided it's going to actually come up on this one. There you go. So I've got a dashboard. Actually, I've broken that down by that functional area again, so we can see the different functions sitting in there. And I've just decided to choose the top 5 risks here, and we can see how they fit into our scoring grid as well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I can see you've got. Are those links there that you can actually access the data?
Actually, on the left-hand side here, yeah, the little, yeah, that's the sort of the standard for links, isn't it? Sort of blue and underlined. Yes, that's right. So if you sent this as a PDF to somebody, they would be able to click on one of these links, and it would actually take them directly to that risk, assuming, of course, that it's got permission to see that risk.
Oh, okay. Yes, yeah. I don't think I would. Yeah, I wouldn't want somebody being able to get to the supplier bankruptcy risk if they weren't supposed to see it. So, yeah. Okay, right. All right. Well, the other big thing that's on the agenda is contingency. How are we, how are we doing on that?
Yeah. Well, if we were right, so that was the particular one we were interested in, was that individual project A, wasn't it? So this is just the risk register for that. So when I click the analyze button up here, that brings up predict risk analyzer for me, which is the Monte Carlo tool we use to be able to look at contingency. And hopefully on the left hand side here, you can see this is a distribution of the potential total cost, yeah, of the risks in project A. And at the moment, we're looking to say we're 90% confident that those risks will cost us less than just over 3 million. Okay. But if we look at the technical demonstrator failure here, all right, if we can completely remove that risk, we'll be about 500,000 better off. Our 90% confidence will be reduced by 500,000. The sorts of things you can do when you're talking to the management team is actually build up these different sorts of scenarios to say, well, okay, if we remove that one, but I could remove others as well. All right, and if we have a look at that, then we can see that's now come down to our 2.5 million over here. All right, so you begin to try those things out.
All right. Well, I think I might be able to do the main risk controller things in the meeting myself, but I might want you to drive this one for me. So
okay,
you're coming, okay?
Right. One of the things to point out there, though,
sorry,
just before we go on, is these results can be pushed back into risk controller, which allows us to then have a look at how we've been changing over time. So if I quickly run that report, then it should bring me up again. There we go. Okay, so you can see when we were first building up the risk register for Project A, things were moving around rather a lot. But I'm currently looking at my 10, 50, 90% confidences, and we're going the wrong way with that one. So people are working really hard to try and mitigate the demonstrator failure risk, and we just need that to happen, which we're aiming to do before the next milestone, which will then hopefully bring our trend here downwards, which is
okay. Well, that would be most welcome. So talking about milestones, what's our schedule looking like?
Right. Yep. If we go back into Analyzer, actually I was ahead of you there. I thought you might be bringing that one up for us, so I've actually brought in the schedule as well. Okay. So what we've got to see here is that our date from the schedule was aiming for us to finish by May, but you might be able to see we're only really 10% confident that we're actually going to be able to make that. The blue distribution here is how we might finish the project based upon purely the uncertainty that we've got within those activities. And then if I take my risks into account, then that's taking us even further. You can see the distribution in red here. And actually we're saying at the moment, we're only if we want to be 90% confident of the date, it's got to be right out in August compared to the May that we've got for the deterministic date.
All right, but at least we've got, if we can eliminate the technical demonstrator risk, then we save nearly 30 days. Okay,
that's right. That's it. So that's the key, as we saw earlier. And in fact, again, if I create my scenario just to turn that one off, all right, then we'll be able to see how my August date hopefully moves into July there as well. All right. Now that's the sort of the quick and dirty turning a whole risks off. If we had more time, we'd be able to go in and actually look at perhaps changing the probability or perhaps the impact of those to see how those would affect us as well. Okay.
Yeah, well, we should have the right people at the meeting next week to actually sit and have a look at some of these. So that will be good.
Yeah, very happy to do that with you.
Right. Okay. So we've been showing you all the various bits of Predict, as I think I said earlier. We weren't using the API, but that's also available. It's time to see if we've got some questions. Now, we've also got some downloads. I mentioned the ASC case study that you might want to have a look at. In the middle, we've got a really lovely blog that our professional services manager, Sushil Chumba, wrote about the power of visualizing risk, and he really got into Monet on that one. And then we also have a white paper, which has been always very successful. People reading our Successful Planners Take Risks white paper. And I think there are a couple of other defense articles that we had in things previously. Right, now I think it's time to take some questions. What have we got?
There's a couple asking about, is this the new version, 6.4 version of Risk Controller, and do all versions of Predict have these options? But yes, this is actually version 6.4.1 of Risk Controller, which will be generally released just after Easter, we hope. Okay.
Yeah, so that's the one. So the new bow tie capability, we're showing you the new version. So it's In fact, it's pretty much ready. We just have to do the penetration testing on it because we have to put it through its final security test before we release it on general release.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Apart from that, everything else was is available on the existing version of 6.4, which is the currently available one. Just to point out though, that the visualization that I showed is a separately licensable module, okay, on top of Predict Risk Controller. Yeah,
and Risk Analyzer is separately licensed as well.
Talking of that, it says Louise asked if only contingent risks or inherent get modelled. I didn't really have time, but yes, we can look at the current or inherent as well as the post mitigation or target or residual, whatever you want to call, and we can compare the current with the target views as well. So we do model both of those. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually that's quite cool because it you can put them on the same graph and you can see how much money you're saving. So it gives you a cost benefit calculation,
Yes.
and that allows you to help demonstrate or convince management of your expenditure on mitigation actions, which is so important because too often it's getting less of an issue, but managers seem to think that either you don't need any money to manage risks, you just it's a zero-sum game, or you just find some opportunities to cancel out the risks, and actually that doesn't really happen. So yes, it's really good to have cost benefit in there.
Josh has said we showed a dashboard. Are your reports customizable? The answer is yes. On the screen that showed the different Predict modules that Val had, Predict Risk Reporter allows you to customize any of the reports that we create, or actually create your own. And to be perfectly honest, I think we've based the dashboard one there based on an example that a customer did. Right, so we're using customers use successfully themselves, so yeah, we can bring those in and create those as examples as well.
Yeah, and what we do is so all of the reports that we ship with Predict are effectively templates, and they can all be modified. But it is the only customization we do in the product. Otherwise, we work collaboratively with customers. We do our best to go out and talk about the new features that we're putting in the system with our customers and find out what it is they want in the system, and then it goes into the general release. So everything is available to everybody, and it reduces the maintenance costs, except if you want specific customer reports. Oh, how long does it take to learn all these features? Well, I don't know, Trevor, what was it? One of our customers said they thought they could bring somebody in off the street and have them using it in how long? 20 minutes?
They said 10 minutes, believe it or not. But I think that was just the straightforward risk controller side. I certainly think the risk analyzer side, when you're doing the Monte Carlo, would take you a little bit longer than that. But more importantly, actually being able to really understand and explain what the outcomes, the outcome of the risk analysis means, is almost more important than the technicalities of actually using it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the important things going back to framework is your organizations needs to have a good configuration and some good basic understanding. People have got pretty good risk awareness these days, but they do need to understand how you want them to use it. When we started implementing it for ISO 27001, I said everybody in risk decisions we use Predict. I got my ITIS manager, my operations manager using it, and it was a journey that we went on to work out how to best configure it to make it really productive for them, to minimize the amount of time they spent in it, because nobody wants to spend loads of time fighting with putting data into a system. But they did need to make sure that it was fit for purpose for the audits that we went through. So it depends on what your requirements are, but as long as you've got a sound configuration and ideally your management are interested in it as well. So engaging them is really important, because then it starts to really come alive.
Do you have a report that is targeted at the boards so they get a high level view for monitoring and decision making? Interesting question.
Well, generally, that's what we do, working with customers to develop, say, a customer report. So many of our customers, we've developed big dashboards. Some of them end up being like things you print out on an A3 because they tend to be quite big. And it really depends on what board's interested in. But interestingly, we also have customers who now say, as their managers get involved and get interested, they go, well, I tell you what, come and have a look at it with me live, because it's so exciting. Sorry, I know, risk is exciting to me. Maybe it's not to everybody, but I find it exciting to sit down with people at senior management level and go, what are you worried about? And you type it into the search box. I remember sitting with a big defense contractor once and said, what are you worried about? And they went, oh, well, I don't know, it was some rare earth metal that they were worried about sourcing. So we typed it in and it came up with 12 risks across the risk register. And they went, wow, I didn't know you could do that. So actually doing things live is, I think, in the end, is better than trying to produce a whole load of reports, because you just have conversations with people.
Robert asked if Predict can interface with Power BI real time, and Jamie's answered with yes, we've got the API, which it does. Thank you very much for that, Jamie. But you say you need to buy the license from Risk Decisions. Well, no, we think connectivity is so important. The license for Predict Connect is at no charge. How about that?
Yeah. The only thing that people need to do is ask us to provide the license. But we decided that it is something that we want to encourage people to integrate, because digitization, the whole kind of digital transformation is so important to our customers that we felt like it was something that we should make available to people. Will controls and risks be able to be shared between them? Oh, yeah, okay. I think this is actually, so Jeffrey, I think this is, you're talking about, you're all using the same system, but you'll have different access. So we didn't talk about security and permissions, but people are given different folders to access. So Navy may not want Army to see their risks, and Army may not want Air Force to see risks, and so on. But we have started looking at, making sure that and doing sessions with the enterprise team, and we've worked out that you will be able to share things like controls, because controls can go in folders that you can share, but you don't have to share the risk folders. So hopefully that answers the question.
Robert's asked about how many impact types does Predict have. As many as you want is the answer. They're completely up to yourselves to define as you think. Yeah.
And the two that are quantitative are cost and time. The rest are qualitative, but the qualitative ones, you can put any text in them you want, and you can have as many dimensions as you want. Obviously, that's down to your organization and how they want to run risk management, because there has to be some structure to it, because when you start reporting upwards, all of those impacts, all of the tags are going to feed into the reporting that is, and it's basically, you want to put data in order to get really good information and reporting out, and be able to search and filter across the organization.
So we've asked about the functional capability. So I was grouping the risks in Visualizer based upon function. That is a category tag that I've got in the system, the demonstration system that we've got here. So you can have, again, as many categories as you like, different types of category with different values in. They can be nested, so you can have multi-level categories, and that's really, really important to build up that risk breakdown structure, to be able to create lists of risks that you're interested in based on the one or more category tags, combinations of those as well. Yeah, so completely configurable by the organization.
I think another thing to note with categories is that you can move them around, because we recognize that our customers regularly change shape, change names, change everything, change the way they report through different structures. And we used to have a demo that we liked, that Trevor loved doing, where when the UK left Europe at Brexit, Trevor would just show people a list where he dragged the UK out of Europe into its own place on its own, and all the lists rippled through and updated. That's a bit old hat now, isn't it? So we stopped doing that.